Okay, now we're going to take a look at the next riff, which I suppose you could call this the chorus riff. This is basically moving between the chords of A major, played at the 2nd fret, shift the chord up a whole tone and play B major, so I'm using a movable A shape, move it up a semitone to C. Throughout this, quite an aggressive, sort of driving strum pattern. So I'll come out of our previous riff section and go into our chorus. Here we go. Then just back into the original riff. Make sure as well when you strike that C chord on the final beat, really cut the chord off. Just something that I should mention at this time, a little bit to do with tone. Obviously Led Zeppelin are seen as one of the pioneers of hard rock and even heavy rock with the style of riffs that they would play and write. But when you actually analyse Jimmy Page's playing and his guitar sound, it's very traditional. Sometimes he'd use the quite thin-sounding guitar tones, using things like Dan Electro guitars. Obviously, he's famed for using Les Pauls and obviously the double neck SG, but also using things like Dan Electros and old early 60 Fender Telecasters, and so the sounds aren't particularly high gain. I've switched to a more of an overdriven tone for this because I didn't want it to sound like a heavy metal track, and I'm also using single coil setting on this guitar using the P90, so it's a little bit more of a traditional sound, quite thin sounding. So don't pile on the crunch. Anyway, after we repeat another verse, which is our octave riff with the E and the A chord, followed by another chorus, we then move into our final riff, which is basically a variation on the octave riff, but this time we just include the C9 chord. Now, the C9 chord is played at the 2nd fret of the D and on the 3rd fret of the A, and then bar your 3rd finger across the top 3 strings at the 3rd fret. It's more likely that you're just hearing those top 3 strings as opposed to the whole chord, but at least you can see the shape that you should hold so that you don't hit any unwanted open strings. So at first the chord stab is fairly sparse, and then it cycles around. What I'm going to do is just play you those 2 riffs. I won't play them in full, but so at least you can hear how they differ. Here we go. Okay, so quite straightforward. Just make sure you really accent that chord. And as I said, as the section repeats, the stab becomes more frequent. So instead of or actually this time, so it's on every bar. And that concludes Immigrant Song.